Caitlin Clark didn't say a word. She didn't need to. From the moment she stepped onto court at the Team USA training camp, the atmosphere changed. Her presence wasn't just felt. It shifted the rhythm of the entire scrimmage. While Paige Bueckers adjusted and matched the pace, Angel Reese found herself isolated, visibly frustrated by the sudden change in dynamic. The whispers about Clark's readiness post-injury faded as her signature long-range shots and pinpoint passes dismantled any lingering doubts. What started as another routine camp quickly unraveled into something deeper, a showcase of silent dominance that appended an unspoken pecking order. Clark's performance didn't just dominate a single practice. It disrupted the architecture of women's basketball. Her effortless control over the game exposed how fragile the traditional power structures had become. Reese's departure wasn't just about frustration. It was about a shift she could no longer influence. Clark's rise isn't about noise, charisma, or controversy. It's about undeniable excellence. And in a system built on hierarchy and legacy, her presence is a reminder that the game respects only one thing: performance. If you're here for the real story and not the filtered version, subscribe. And if you're sticking around for the next meltdown, you better definitely subscribe. Caitlin Clark didn't have to say a word. She walked into Team USA training camp, and the entire vibe shifted. Not because she asked for attention or demanded respect, because her presence demanded it for her. She had nothing to prove, and yet everything about how she moved, passed, and shot the ball made it clear. She was in control now. The same system that spent months debating whether she even deserved to be here? Yeah, now it revolved around her. The chatter faded once drills started. Every possession she touched looked sharper. Her signature three-point shots? Laser precise. Her no-look passes? Running like clockwork. There was no flash for the sake of flash. It was functional dominance, refined, focused, and absolute. Every time the ball left her hand, you could feel something shifting, not just in the gym, in the power structure. And that's when the discomfort began. While some players adjusted, others didn't. Angel Reese, who'd come into this camp with her own momentum and media heat, suddenly found herself sidelined, not literally, but figuratively. You could see it on her face, in her body language. The tension wasn't spoken out loud, but was building with every drill Clark led and every moment she didn't defer. Then came the breaking point. Reese walked out. No official statement. No injury. Just walked. She wasn't benched. She wasn't subbed out. She removed herself. The message was louder than anything she could have said in an interview. In a space where competition is expected, her reaction told a different story. The spotlight had shifted, and not everyone was ready for the new arrangement. It wasn't the first time Clark had caused a ripple in a locker room, but this wasn't college ball anymore. This was the upper echelon of international play. And despite being back from injury, she wasn't pulling any punches. Her physicality had returned, and she was absorbing contact like a pro. Whether she was taking hits at the rim or barreling through defenders, she made it clear that she could hang with anyone, physically, mentally, and strategically. There were moments when defenders tried to push her around, test her toughness. Clark didn't flinch. She'd get up, shake it off, and punish them on the other end with a step-back three or a perfect assist. No jawing, no theatrics, just consequences, the kind that changed the tone of practice. Meanwhile, Paige Bueckers, another young star with expectations of her own, took a different route. She didn't walk away. She adapted. Her game evolved right there on the floor. Instead of resisting the change, she found ways to complement Clark's tempo. She cut harder, passed smarter, defended with more intent. She adjusted her play style not out of fear, but survival. Bueckers' reaction underscored a bigger truth. There's a new rhythm now, and Clark is setting the beat. For players like Paige, that meant stepping up and evolving. For others, it exposed how hard it is to accept a diminished role, even if the shift is based entirely on. By the time scrimmage kicked off, it was undeniable. Clark wasn't just a participant. She was orchestrating, controlling the rhythm, dictating who got the ball, when they got it, and how it got there. Her reads were instantaneous, her execution spotless. Her shooting, especially from deep, was basically unfair. The kind of unfair that makes defenders start second-guessing every closeout. It wasn't about scoring for her, either. It was the timing, the decision-making. Clark knew when to drive, when to pass, when to take over, and when to let the game come to her. This wasn't someone looking to prove herself. This was someone who had already arrived. And the longer this went on, the more obvious it became that something was breaking down behind the scenes. Clark's rise wasn't just a personal victory. It was a challenge to the unspoken order that had been in place for years. Angel Reese walking out wasn't just about frustration. It was symbolic. Her exit told you everything about how power shifts in sports don't just happen, they're felt. Deeply, personally. There was never a direct confrontation. No yelling or drama. But you didn't need it. Clark's dominance was quiet. But the fallout around it, that was loud and unavoidable. Later, when asked about the camp, Clark stayed composed. She didn't call anyone out, didn't celebrate the moment. She just talked about competing, learning, improving. But you could read between the lines. She knew what had happened. Everyone did. She had stepped into a new role without asking for it. And everyone else had to deal with what that meant. That's the thing with Clark. She doesn't do declarations. She doesn't need to. Her game speaks louder than any soundbite could. And it's not just what she says, it's how everyone else reacts around her. That's where the real story lives. This was an entirely triumphant moment, either. There was a quiet sadness to it all. Not for Clark, but for what it exposed. The fragility of old hierarchies. The instability of respect that isn't built on performance. For all the applause Clark got that day, the camp also revealed the cracks in how women's basketball has treated generational talent, and how slow the system is to adapt. Clark didn't break the system. She just walked in and showed that the rules were already outdated. Her presence forced a reckoning. The fact that her excellence triggered this kind of emotional fallout, that says more about the state of the game than any stat line ever could. There were, however, a few players who embraced it, Aya Wilson being one of them. Veterans who understood that Clark isn't a threat to the game. They saw her as the future of it. Wilson's approach was collaborative, competitive, but respectful, because real pros know what real talent looks like, and they don't get insecure when it shows up. Clark's connection with players like Wilson gave the camp a strange balance. On one side, tension. On the other, evolution. It was like watching the league turn a corner in real time, and the divide between those who could move forward and those who couldn't grew wider with each practice. By the end of camp, there was no more debate. Clark had elevated the standard. Her performance was undeniable. And while her critics scrambled to adjust their narratives, the cameras didn't lie. The footage told the full story. This was a player who belonged. Not just on the team, but at the center of the future of women's basketball. What started as another camp turned into a defining moment, not just for Caitlin Clark, but for the league, for the culture, and for everyone watching. The message wasn't delivered in a viral quote or a flashy highlight. It was in the silence that followed her dominance, and the aftershocks that haven't stopped since. If you felt that shift, if you're seeing the new era unfold in real time, hit the like button, drop your thoughts and comments, and make sure you're subscribed. There's more coming, and trust, you don't want to miss the next shakeup. There's always going to be talk about Caitlin Clark and Paige Bueckers, two elite guards, both magnetic in their own way. But at this camp, the contrast is glaring. Paige held her own, but Clark dictated the terms. It wasn't just about shot percentage or assist counts. It was about flow, control. You could see it in how teammates started looking to Clark first, how she initiated, how she slowed it down or sped it up, always one step ahead. Paige tried to mirror that energy, and to her credit, she got closer with each session. But even she had to adjust her game to Clark's rhythm. That shift wasn't forced. It was earned. Clark didn't need to dominate through volume. She dominated through clarity. Every decision was clean. Every movement had purpose. And it started showing on everyone else's face, whether they wanted to admit it or not. The reporters circled after practice, waiting for quotes. Clark gave them exactly what she always does. Humble, brief, focused. She talked about how tough the camp was, how honored she felt to be there, how much she respected the other players. Classic Clark. But beneath the polished responses, there was something sharp. She wasn't here for headlines. She was here to take what she'd earned. She didn't mention Reese. She didn't need to. She didn't gloat. But she also didn't diminish herself to make others comfortable. The silent confidence in her tone said it all. This wasn't a breakout moment. This was a takeover. One that had been in motion for a while. This camp just forced everyone to finally see it. It wasn't long ago that people were still doubting her body. The injury whispers were loud for months. Would she return to full speed? Could she take hits? Could she handle the weight of expectations now that she was no longer the scrappy underdog, but the name in all caps on the roster sheet? The answer came fast. In the opening minutes of first scrimmage, she collided hard on a drive. Body to body, no foul called. She popped back up instantly and drained a three on the next play. That moment erased everything. She wasn't tentative. She wasn't playing scared. Whatever pain or rehab she'd gone through was behind her. Physically, she was all the way back. Mentally, she never left. Some people thought Diana Taurasi might have something to say about all this. After all, it wasn't long ago that Taurasi questioned whether Clark was ready for the big stage. But in camp, there wasn't drama, just observation. Taurasi watched, measured, took mental notes. You could almost feel her trying to calculate if this was hype or something more dangerous. And as camp went on, that edge softened. Clark didn't try to outshine her. She just played. And even the veterans began adjusting. Taurasi may not have said it out loud, but you could read it in her body language. Clark wasn't coming for the torch. She just already had it. Ice Cube. The outside noise didn't help. The Ice Cube in Big 3 drama, that added fuel to a fire that was already out of control. Angel Reese had made it clear that she was fielding offers, exploring options, using her leverage. Clark, on the other hand, hadn't said a word. No media tour. No sound bites. Just showed up to camp and let her game do all the talking. So when Reese walked out, people speculated. Was it about playing time? Was it about media narratives? Was it about ego? In the context of everything swirling around the WNBA, nil deals, and outside leagues, the walkout didn't feel like a blip. It felt like a fracture, and Clark didn't react. Not once. Because when you're that focused, distractions are just background noise. But behind the dominance, there was something undeniably isolating. Clark never asked to be a symbol. She didn't apply to carry the baggage of a fractured league or the tension of veterans and rookies colliding. She just wanted to play. And yet, she became the catalyst for all of it. Every drill, every shot, every pass, magnified under a microscope. And while she handled it with grace, the emotional toll was visible in glimpses. The way she sat a little longer on the bench. The way she exhaled after certain plays. Clark isn't robotic. She feels everything. But the weight of expectations never made her smaller. If anything, it hardened her resolve. She wasn't going to make herself less just to keep the peace. Sue Bird, who'd watched this kind of transformation play out over generations, seemed to recognize what was happening. She'd seen stars rise and fall. And when she showed up at camp, she didn't overshadow, she observed. Her presence around Clark wasn't heavy. It was respectful, like one generational player acknowledging another. That quiet moment between them, just a few words exchanged, a nod, maybe a half smile, it spoke volumes. Bird didn't need to coach her. She saw someone who already understood the game on that level. And more importantly, she saw how Clark was changing the emotional landscape just by existing in this. Stat sheets will never tell the full story. But for what it's worth, Clark's shooting during camp was absurd. From behind the arc, she barely missed. Pull-ups, step-backs, catch and shoot didn't matter. Every time she rose up, defenders tensed. You could see it in the rotations, in the scrambling, in the hesitation of players who didn't know whether to switch or stay. She turned scrimmages into performances, not for show, but because her natural rhythm was just that captivating. Every shot said, "I'm here, and I'm not asking permission anymore." And the more she hit, the quieter the gym got, not out of disrespect, out of realization. Even still images from the camp tell the story. Clark, mid-crossover, eyes up, defenders behind her. Clark holding the ball, surrounded, calm as ever. Clark walking off the court, sweat-drenched but unfazed. These aren't glamour shots. They're records, evidence that she came into a system that didn't quite know what to do with her, and she redefined it without asking. She didn't break rules. She rewrote expectations. And when the media tried to frame her as a disruptor, the problem, the too much too soon, the photos betrayed the truth. She wasn't the storm. She was the anchor. Everyone else just had to catch up. What makes all of this even more surreal is how fast the narrative flipped. Not long ago, she was a question mark. Could she hold up physically? Could she adapt to pro speed? Could she deliver under pressure? Now, all those questions feel outdated. The injury that once lingered in every conversation has faded into a footnote. Her conditioning, her recovery, her return, it wasn't just effective, it was transformative. She didn't come back as the same player. She came back smarter, stronger, more dangerous. The kind of comeback that shuts up the noise for good. Inside the chaos of reshaped chemistry and tense court dynamics, there were players like Lexi Hull who just got it. She wasn't rattled, and she didn't shrink. Hull found herself aligning with Clark on the court, not because it was a popular move, but because it worked. Their communication didn't need words. Quick eye contact, sharp cuts, kickouts from deep, all natural. That kind of synergy doesn't just happen. It's earned through game IQ and mutual respect. While others were still calculating how to respond to Clark's presence, Hull adapted in real time. It made her look smarter, faster, more locked in. That's the thing about rising stars. They don't just elevate themselves. They expose who's really ready to grow. But even in moments of on-court chemistry, you couldn't ignore the weight Clark was carrying. Everyone wanted a piece of her. Every mistake dissected. Every assist scrutinized. The pressure to not only play well, but also play nice was suffocating. And still, she didn't lash out. She didn't duck responsibility. She kept showing up. You could see it, though, in the quiet walk back to the baseline, the way she looked down between drills. Just for a second, this wasn't a player overwhelmed by the game. It was a player trying to survive the expectations wrapped around it. And the hardest part? Knowing that no matter how dominant she was, it would never be enough for everyone. Then there was Sophie Cunningham, another spark plug on the court, known for her aggression and sharp edge. But even she seemed caught between admiration and adjustment. Her chemistry with Clark wasn't as clean. At times, it felt like Sophie was trying to assert herself the old-fashioned way, through physicality, intensity, grit. But Clark doesn't play that game. She doesn't need to outbark you. She'll just outthink and outplay you until the scoreboard does the talking. And that subtle friction? It played out in small ways. Misconnections, brief glances, moments where you could tell that Cunningham was still trying to figure out what Clark meant for New Balance. Then you saw Angel Reese from a distance, after the walkout, in post-practice shots, isolated, still in uniform, but disconnected. Whatever led to her exit, it wasn't just heat-of-the-moment frustration. It was a culmination, a slow realization that the game was changing and the spotlight doesn't just rotate. It recalibrates based on performance. Reese didn't get pushed out. The door stayed open, but she chose to walk anyway. And that decision, frozen in those match photos, the stillness, the silence, told its own story. One of tension, pride, and maybe the first real moment where the hierarchy got flipped in a way that couldn't be denied or undone. Clark never exploded, but there was a flash, a moment during a full-court drill where a hard foul wasn't called. She turned, eyes narrowed, no words, just a look. And it said more than a scream ever could. That was her limit. That was the line. She wasn't just here to coexist. She was here to compete. That flash of fire? That's what people had been waiting for. Not because they wanted drama, but because it proved what some still doubted. Clark isn't soft. She's not just a comm technician with range. She's got grit, that quiet, simmering type that doesn't always surface, but lives in every possession. And when she finally let it show, the room got quiet. In close-up, it all becomes clearer. The intensity, the exhaustion, the razor-sharp focus. Zoom in on Clark mid-huddle, and you don't see a rookie. You see someone scanning the floor like it's a chessboard, calculating, adjusting. You can almost see the gears turning. That's what separates her. Not just execution, but anticipation. It's not glamour. It's not branding. It's work. And in every photo, every candid shot, it shows. This isn't someone caught up in the attention. This is someone dealing with the burden of it. And even in still frames, that weight is unmistakable. Wearing her Indiana Fever gear in a sea of Team USA red, white, and blue, Clark stood out. Not because of color, but because of presence. She brought the Fever energy with her, and it clashed with the formality of Team USA in all the right ways. She wasn't about being polite. She was about being impactful. That jersey had become more than a uniform. It was a statement that the same player who got doubted, sidelined, and low-key resented had now earned her seat in the most elite room possible. Not because of marketing, because of buckets, because of leadership, because of results. The jersey didn't make her. She made it mean. Even after hours of intense scrimmages, Clark's mechanics didn't waver. Her legs stayed strong. Her release stayed pure. She could be gassed and still sink it from the volleyball line like she just clocked in. That stamina, that muscle memory, it came from months of rehab, isolation, and grinding when no one was watching. Her shots weren't just falling. They were deflating defenses. Each made bucket chipped away at any lingering resistance to her leadership. It wasn't a flashy takeover. It was a quiet siege, one possession at a time, until even the skeptics had to admit what was happening. When the final practice ended, Clark didn't linger. She gave her final remarks to the press with the same measured tone she always does. Thankful, focused, determined, but her answers hit differently now. She wasn't talking like the new kid. She spoke like a leader, not by choice, but because the court had voted and they chose her. She never declared herself the face of anything. The moment just pushed her there. And while she never asked for that role, she didn't run from it either. That's the tension Clark walks with. She carries the weight of a movement, even if all she ever wanted was to hoop. The final collection of photos from camp says it all. Clark cutting through defenders. Clark dapping up veterans. Clark sitting alone with a towel draped over her shoulders, eyes locked on nothing, lost in thought. These aren't viral moments. They're proof. Proof of someone who came in surrounded by doubt and left surrounded by impact. They show a new reality, where the unspoken rules of legacy and pecking order got disrupted, where a new kind of star emerged, not louder but clearer, not flashier but sharper, and maybe, most importantly, one who didn't ask to be an agent of change but became one anyway. Because when you dominate in silence, the noise eventually turns into applause. If you made it this far, you're clearly following a shift. So tap the subscribe, drop a comment on where you think the league's headed, and hit that like if you're ready for the next chapter. The game's changed, and it's only just getting started.